Hello everyone. It is 2 o'clock, so I think we should start. So hello and welcome everyone to Startup Magazine and Buzzbar's pitching party. We are so glad that you could all join us on this lovely day. I am the editor of Startups Magazine, and I'm obviously joined by the lovely Paul from Buzzbar.
Hello.
Paul, how are you doing? Tell us a bit about Buzzbar.
Doing okay. Yeah, Buzzbar's doing all right as well. Buzzbar's the on-demand, pay-as-you-go digital marketing and production service. So bizarrely enough, these aren't just things I choose to put on my background. These are the services that Buzzbar do. If you want to find out more about Buzzbar, it's buzzbar.co. But Startup Magazine and Buzzbar have been friends for a long time, and we partnered on these event series and lots of others in the past when we were allowed to physically meet up and do that sort of stuff and learn from some good people. And so essentially, they're a partner of ours. So 45 minutes is what everybody gets on here. They can come and do a marketing consult with one of our marketing specialists, talk about anything you want, whether you're starting a new side hustle, your existing business, you want an investment deck done, all of that stuff we do all day, every day for people, big and small. We've worked for Google all the way down to somebody who walked in from Goose Island, which is an amazing pub in Shoreditch, if you like pizza, who wanted a logo made from a napkin. So super talented crew. Love working with them. I'm meant to be in America hiring 150 people. Really excited about today's session. I'll put a link in the chat, but obviously please concentrate on all the speakers today, and the chat's also going in an email as well afterwards, so you'll get the link there as well. But everyone gets 45 minutes free, courtesy of Startups Magazine. Thanks for having us.
No, thank you, Paul. This is our third event with Buzzbar this year, so we're so glad to be working with you again. It's a pleasure, and yes, hopefully it'll be back in person soonish. But yeah, well, yes. So today, of course, we're covering investment, finance, and pitching. But we thought it might be nice if the tables were turned today, and for once we have the finance professionals pitching to you. So we have Kevin Smith from Boom & Partners, who will be pitching about accelerators. We have Heather Corcoran from Kickstarter, who will be pitching crowdfunding. We have Hana Tranova from Barclays, who will be pitching VC and angel investment. And we have Flavia Richardson from Silicon Valley Bank, who will be pitching alternative programs and general funding at the moment. So a full program ahead for us. At the end of the pitching session, we then have 4 breakout rooms, with each speaker will be in one, and there'll also be a member of Startups Magazine team in with the speakers, so you can go there and ask any questions that you may have specific to that type of funding. You should have all received the details for the breakout rooms on the pre-event mailer, but we can always pop them again in the chat so you know which one and how to join which one you want. The password for each room is just startups, all lowercase, so that should be easy enough for you all to get in. And this is the first time we've ever done breakout rooms, so please do bear with us. I don't think there's going to be any hiccups. Confidence is key, but just so you know, it is the first time, so you never know. Before we start, I want to jump in. I just want to say again a thank you to Buzzbar for working with us, and again they're offering obviously our attendees today a free consultation, so if you haven't checked them out, you really should definitely check them out. And finally, we have the brand new issue being released tomorrow, but all you lovely people that have joined us will receive an exclusive preview this afternoon for attending, so make sure you look out for that. Now, without further ado, let me please welcome you to Kevin.
Absolutely. So not quite an elevator pitch, unless it's an extremely slow elevator for moving it to 10 minutes to get from the top to the bottom. One of the things with accelerators is people muddle up what is the difference between an accelerator and an incubator. So let us clear that up first. An incubator is aimed much more at startup businesses. And it's just like you put an egg in an incubator to help it to start in the first place. An accelerator is something where a business already has started to form and has started to gather some traction. And accelerators operate in lots of different ways. So I am a mentor for the UK's largest accelerator, which happens also to be Europe's largest fintech accelerator. And I'm also a fintech mentor there. And whilst it's the largest and it operates in certain ways, that there are many, many of them, and they go all the way down to accelerators with just one branch with half a dozen companies in it. But the idea behind them is to help early stage businesses, typically, as I've said, not the very startup, but early stage businesses with some form of real proof of concept behind them, all the way through to those businesses raising funding, maybe Series A or even above. So I've worked with companies that are literally just out of startup stage through to looking to raise tens of millions of pounds, all in accelerators. And some of them will offer you access to their pool of investors. So a quick, easier way of introduction to high net worth individuals or family offices or those areas. Others of them will shy away from that a little bit for technical FCA type regulations. And others will all do things in a slightly different way, but majority of them provide some sort of space. So think WeWork, if you will, but for free. So all of the desking and hot desking and printing and telephone systems and all of that is provided free, which saves you as an early stage business those costs. Much more importantly than that, though, they all provide some form of much greater assistance. And that can either be in the form of free legal assistance or access to somebody that is able to do that, or it can be partnerships with law firms or computer firms or all those other businesses that are wanting to work with early stage businesses. They also provide online, both online and on-site tuition and coaching from their own members of staff. They tend to have a whole series of mentors, which is where people like me get involved, and we give our time for free in order to work with these early stage businesses, because so many businesses have such fantastic ideas and they just need that little extra help to turn those ideas into something more concrete. And it's often very good to have an outsider with more general experience to look at them and question them and ask why they're doing something, how they're going about it, but also to use the mentor's contacts. And then, as well as that, the accelerators often do seminars, events, half-day events, couple-of-hour events where they bring in external experts. So it may be about marketing, it may be about social networking, it may be all of those different things through to protecting your IP and those areas as well. So all of those are sort of the more technical, sort of hard type skills. But one of the things when I speak to people that are part of these various programs, one of the things that they really, really gain from them is that they are amongst fellow startups. So one of the problems with setting up your own business and starting to scale that is it's all too easy about feeling you're alone and the problems you're experiencing are unique. And I guess it's like when you have a child, everything's a big problem, but when you speak to other parents, everybody's going through the same problem. And it's not until you start to speak about that you understand that is the case. So by bringing all of the startups together in these accelerators, you start to understand that people are going through the same sort of experiences. And often just by talking amongst yourselves, forget the outside assistance or the seminars or anything else, but just by talking with yourselves, with other people running their own startups, you get to learn from other people and share contacts, share mistakes, all of those sort of things. a very common one that I come across is R&D tax credits. Nobody seems to know about R&D tax credits, but it seems to spread like proverbial wildfire in an incubator or an accelerator when somebody gets to know about it, because they go around telling everybody else about it, and then everybody is applying for that tax credit. So it's exactly those sort of areas that you can benefit from. And it's that whole sense of feeling not alone, and that networking process as well. Inevitably, you will come across companies doing similar things. I'm a business and finance consultant. There's loads of us out there, but I don't ever see that as competition, because everybody does things in a slightly different way, slightly different, unique product or service, or the way they deliver it, or niche in the market. So even if in your cohort in the accelerator there are companies doing something very similar, they're often the ones that you can gain that the most benefit from. And likewise, you can also benefit from companies doing something totally different, just because as a startup you've got many issues the same in trying to scale your business. So I think all of these are free in one way or another. They, as I've said, offer different things. There are some very big ones like NatWest and Virgin and Barclays doing, again, different things in different ways, but there are some much smaller ones out there as well. And the point of them is really to just give that lending hand. And there's more of them out there than most people think. So I really would urge early stage businesses to just Google, look around, ask around contacts that you know, and find out about them. You have to normally go through some sort of process, application type process, like an interview, like a pitch, because each of these accelerators will only take on, obviously, they're limited in space, so they will only take on the businesses that they think have the best chance and they can help the most. So and one of the other aspects that I should have mentioned is they are constantly priming you in terms of producing pitch decks and business plans and practicing your pitch deck. One of the roles I play is as a dragon on Dragon's Den, so that the people can actually get involved and pitch, and then we will help them with both their pitch and indeed the business, so that they're ready to go out into that big wide world when they do want to raise finance, or they are looking for assistance in some other way. So it's just a very good way of networking, understanding, growing, benefiting from all of the areas that I've mentioned, and all of that is free. So it's really a case of, well, why wouldn't you? At the moment, of course, they're having to do it in a different way virtually, but the ones I'm involved with are still very active and still doing basically the same programs, but just having to adapt to doing it online rather than face-to-face. But coronavirus won't last forever. We will be let back out, and so they'll be going back to doing it in some way as they were before. So I'm conscious of time. My elevator has nearly got to the floor it's meant to reach. I'm very happy to answer questions afterwards in the breakout sessions, and make some very direct suggestions to people with specific questions, or just give you a general chat, or indeed very happy to have a general conversation about anything you might be wanting to discuss as a startup after this session. And I've written one of the articles in this week's magazine, this magazine. So you'll also find me in there and contact details there. So I guess that's me.
Perfect timing as well. Well done, Kevin. Thank you very much. Thank you. That was great. Yes, so anyone who wants to know more from Kevin, or just wants to ask Kevin a question in general, he'll be in Breakout Room 1, and we'll post the details on at the end. And now we would like to pass the baton to the lovely Heather.
Thanks so much for having me. I feel like it's a bit, you know, I have 15 minutes here, and I feel like that's a bit of cheating, because most startup pitches I've ever been to, they really make them do those 3-minute pitches. But luckily, I've been giving a bit more time. Or I've been given a bit more time. So I'm going to share some slides here and run through a few slides. Oops, excuse me. Let me just get this ready for you. Excellent. So first, I just want to introduce myself a little bit. I oversee Kickstarter's design and technology communities with a focus on the growth of our international markets. I'm based in the UK. I'm actually up in Liverpool right now, but normally based in London. And I've been with Kickstarter for about 4 years. In that time, I've advised probably hundreds of campaigns, if not thousands, who have raised many millions of pounds in pledges. And I work primarily with hardware startups, product designers, or makers of all kinds, people who are bringing mostly products to Kickstarter. I want to start my pitch here with a story, and that's a story about these two bike lights. On the surface of them, they look kind of similar. They both look nice. They both have interesting kind of like smart or tech features. They're both around the same price point. They're both around, you know, £100. They're available in the same kind of cycling shops like Evans or Giant or whatever. But if you dig a little deeper, you'll find out that these two bike lights represent two completely fundamentally different approaches to how a product comes to life. So the one on the left there is from Garmin, and they're a large company who have been around for a while. Many of you have probably heard of them. And they dream up hundreds of products in, you know, maybe in an R&D department of their company. They allocate a marketing budget and kind of go out there and hope that people buy it. The one on the right is from a company called Barrel, and they're a new cycling product company based in London. And the product they made is called Laser Light, and it's a really cool product. What it does is project the image of a bike in front of a bicycle using a laser. You can kind of see it on the ground there in the bottom right, to increase safety and kind of visibility for cyclists on the road. And it was dreamed up by this person called Emily Brooke when she was a young product design student at the University of Brighton. It was actually her thesis project when she was, you know, a student. She'd never launched a product in the world before. But it happened to coincide with, you know, her graduation happened to coincide with the moment that Kickstarter was opening up in the UK. And so Emily had this idea to launch her project on Kickstarter. And she put a page up. She asked kind of the world for around £50,000 to put her prototype into production, which she received from the help from around 800 backers. Now you can see that you know, the company has grown and their products are kind of seen all over the world, including thousands of bike share bikes, including London's own. So I'm sure that most of you or many of you have seen these around the city. So just a really amazing success story. And as I say, an example of how a product can come to life through Kickstarter in a completely different way. So with that story, I want to move on to sort of the pitch and talk about Kickstarter. Kickstarter was founded in 2009, and we are really a global community of creativity and creative projects. But our definition of creativity is quite expansive. So it's art and film and music, but also innovation and product design and, you know, maker projects. We're probably the best known crowdfunding platform, and we really sort of popularized the modern idea of crowdfunding. And we are a rewards-based crowdfunding platform specifically. So we don't, we're not like there are a lot of different flavors of crowdfunding. We're not an equity crowdfunding platform or anything like that. What it means is that people back things on Kickstarter in return for rewards, usually a copy of the thing, you know, that somebody is making in the world. In the 10 years that we've been around, we've seen 175,000 projects funded, 4 billion pledged to those projects by 17 million backers. And those backers are really from all over the world. People from nearly every country on earth have backed a project on Kickstarter, from every single continent. And we've seen that model has been, you know, just really powerful in many different disciplines in all the categories on Kickstarter. We know that Kickstarter projects are incredibly influential in their own domain. So every single year there is a Kickstarter funded film that has been nominated for the Oscar, and we've had two of them win. This is the most recent one, called Period of End of Sentence. Art projects that have been funded on Kickstarter have been sort of exhibited or collected by some of the most prestigious institutions in the world. Technologies that have been funded on Kickstarter have opened up entirely new categories of innovation. So, you know, most famously Oculus Rift, which was originally funded on Kickstarter, and essentially, yeah, opened up the new category of virtual reality and inspired so many other creators and innovations in its wake. So you can see we have like lots of different, as I say, 15 different categories and so much funding to each and every category. But the largest categories are design and technology. And again, that's my specialism. And for startups, that's, you know, the most common category. I think we have around 45% of all pledges on Kickstarter go to design and tech. And we've seen a particular impact on hardware startups. So there is some software in these categories, but mostly a lot of hardware, everything from bike projects, you know, smart grills, backpacks, watches, all that kind of stuff. So I want to use the rest of my time here to leave you with some kind of tips for success on your Kickstarter campaign. And I think that this will, you know, help you to get a sense of whether Kickstarter and crowdfunding is for you. First, I'll reiterate what crowdfunding really is. It's really about creating a story around your idea and opening up your idea to a community to make kind of like deep and authentic connections with backers. So think about it not as a place, I know this is a funding session today, but think about it not just as a place for receiving money, but a place where you're inviting people into your startup and into your idea and helping and letting them kind of get involved. First of all, it, you know, starts with a great product or a great idea. You know, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that kind of obvious point that, you know, you really need to have a great idea as the foundation of your campaign. And then if you are creating a product, again, you know, if you are creating a hardware product, it's important that you have a prototype. And not only a prototype, but a good prototype that you can show off in a campaign and you can tell a story around this prototype. After you've done that, you can go out there and think about how you're going to show off that amazing idea in, you know, images and video in the campaign. So, you know, when Paul was talking about Buzzbar, you know, maybe Buzzbar can help with that, and really think about how to, yeah, show it off in the real world, maybe with lifestyle demos, lifestyle photos, just getting those really great images that show off your project and your idea. On Kickstarter and in crowdfunding, transparency and authenticity really matter. You know, again, it's very different to, you know, e-commerce or other ways of bringing your idea to life. People want to be connected and they want to see the inspiration and the passion behind your idea. Showing the design process is another great way that you can do this. So, you know, whatever your idea is, document everything. You know, take photos of your prototypes, take photos of your sketches, because those are the things that are going to be, yeah, kind of gold dust when you go to like tell your story on your page. So that design process is really engaging for people. And then, you know, after you've done that, you've built a great page, go out and tell the world about your idea. Being committed to outreach and like, you know, telling the world about your idea is really important for Kickstarter and crowdfunding. And in short, there are 4 ways that you're going to reach your funding goal. The first is your pre-launch community. So that's essentially the email list that you have built in advance of your launch. You know, there are lots of different ways that you can build an email, a list or a community in advance of Kickstarter. You know, too many to get into now, but what I will say is start early, focus on quality, not quantity. So get really good, highly engaged people on your list, and always channel, you know, everything back to an email list. Your email list is one of your best tools. The second way that you can drive funding and pledges to your Kickstarter campaign is through the Kickstarter community. And in the design and tech categories in particular, we tend to tell people that you can expect between 20 to 30% of your pledges to come from Kickstarter just from being on our site. So again, we have a lot of people who are looking for projects all the time. We recommend projects to them in various ways. And this is a kind of like expected range that you can come on Kickstarter and hope to receive. The third is, of course, press and blogs. And this can often be a bit of a wild card because you never know if press are going to write about your project, and if they do, whether that's going to convert to pledges, but it's still a really important one. And the last one is digital ads or paid media, if you choose to do it. Not every campaign chooses to do this. You know, it depends on whether you have the budget or, you know, the margins or whatever, but this can be a piece, especially if you're looking to raise like millions or multi-millions. So really just trying to think about those 4 levers and how you're going to maximize each of them in order to reach your funding goal. So to wrap up, I just want to cover off a few points about when you might use Kickstarter versus other methods of bringing your project to life. And just a couple of quick points. Crowdfunding can really support your startup's independence. So it might be good for you if you, for example, don't want to give away equity for your idea. And you want to remain pretty independent and yeah, not have to take other types of investment that might be a little bit more restricting. It also creates like a really deep connection with your community. So it can be a good way of yeah, again, like launching your startup or your company in a public and creating a relationship with those first fans and early adopters. And then it also elevates the experience of your product or your project or whatever you're making beyond just the thing itself. So what I mean by that is that people develop, again, this relationship with your whole entire story and mission as a company. In return, of course, it demands some things of you. I would say, you know, transparency and openness is a really important part of crowdfunding. You need to be able to work in public. If you are somebody who wants to work in stealth and not telling anyone about your idea before you launch it, then crowdfunding is probably not a good thing for you. You need to be committed to outreach. So again, telling the world about your idea, and also community management. So every person who backs your project on Kickstarter is going to be somebody who then has a relationship with you. They might be asking you questions, or they want more information, or they're leaving comments. So community management is key. And then also storytelling ability, and also that your startup or your project or your idea has a story behind it. So, you know, just trying to think about what is the story behind what you're doing, and then being able to tell that through a Kickstarter campaign. So those are some of the things I think that, yeah, again, what the model demands of you and why you might use it. Just to wrap up, I do want to acknowledge the kind of moment that we're in, because I get a lot of questions right now about whether now is the right time to launch a project on Kickstarter. And in fact, our data is saying yes. Actually, rather excitingly, May is going to be the largest, or the biggest amount of funding that we've ever received in a single month in Kickstarter's 11-year history is going to be this May. We've crossed that milestone already, which was kind of crazy and weird, but also very cool and exciting. So we do see that there are a lot of people out there who are, you know, sat at home, kind of looking at projects and backing things. So if you do want to launch a project on Kickstarter, you know, I would say that, you know, our data is strong, and you should go ahead and do it. So that's all I have for today, and I'm gonna stop to share my screen here. And yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Perfect, that was amazing, and again, perfect timing. I loved the presentation, and we actually featured Emily Brooke in one of the earlier issues. That's such a great campaign that she did, and the product and the story and everything. So yeah,
thank you. Great.
Definitely. Thank you, Heather, and we'll see you soon in one of the breakout rooms. So without further ado, again, I'd like to welcome Hannah back to our screens.
Everyone can hear me. So I am sending you lots of sunshine from Prague, the capital city of the Czech Republic, where I've been taking refuge for the last few months before the lockdown. And it's actually my home country, so don't get me wrong on that. So I'm Hannah. I'm currently a partnership manager at Barclays Ventures. I look after the Barclays Eagle Labs in terms of partners that we work with. Barclays Eagle Labs is a network of incubators. We've got about 23 to 25 now around the country. Prior to joining Barclays, I was working at an investment fund and a network of angel investors. And there I was often called the gatekeeper of the family money, basically because my job was to identify high potential startups, interview the founders, review their pitch decks, sort of searching for the gems to present to our investors, and so that they could decide which ones we would invest in. And so I remember going through possibly hundreds of pitch decks every month, most of which sadly didn't get anywhere for very, very similar reason. And that was the failure to tick the boxes of our investors' mentality and preference. So that was actually there when I realized that there's quite a gap between what investors wanted to see and what entrepreneurs thought they wanted to see. So after I joined Barclays 3-4 years ago, I used that insight to help startups increase their chance of getting investment. You might know one of my earliest mentees, Buzzbar. I was actually mentoring Anna Downey, the founder of Buzzbar back then, when it was simply an idea. And when she identified a problem that she couldn't find a way to solve in the market. So that's my background. Hopefully Anna will give me a very good review. So I'm here today to talk to you about angel investment and VC funds. Under normal circumstances, the first question I usually ask is whether and how many of you have received an investment from angels or VC fund before, so that I can tailor my speech a little bit to the audience. But given that I can't see you all, I'll treat this as an 101. So please don't hate on me if I'm talking about things that you already know. Hopefully you will find out something new. So rather than telling you about which VC or angel network or angels are the best that you should go for, because I think that's fairly subjective anyway, depends on your needs and their requirements. So instead, I would like to help you understand these types of investments, their mechanics, the pros and cons, so that you can decide for yourself whether this is something that you would want and who you would like to work with. So angel investors and classic VC funds invest for equity. So unless you're willing to share the cake, don't consider them. I get that sometimes founders can be quite reluctant to give up partial control over their company, obviously because it's their baby after all, I understand that, but you need to look at the bigger picture. You can't grow this baby alone. And 30% of a 100 million business is larger than 100% of a tiny baby or of nothing. And so, you know, that is something that you need to look towards. Not about what you lose now, but what you can gain in the future. So the way angels and VC funds invest differ essentially given their capability and mentality. Capability is how much money they have got to play with and what they are experts of. Are they specialists in the healthcare or energy or retail business? Or do they have a fairly diverse investment team that can basically assess businesses from across a whole range of industries? Because that's going to dictate their investment focus and the ticket size. Although angel investors, more often than not, they will maintain a diverse portfolio, which I will explain later why. Mentality is basically the risk that they are willing to take on. And that stems from the fact that angel investors invest with their own money and they don't have to answer to anyone, maybe except their spouses. VC funds invest other people's money. So VC funds have got their own image, their own investors and a board that they have to answer to. If a VC fund invests their money poorly and lose money of their investors, that fund is not going to last very long with that traction. So for VC funds, their success is quite important because that dictates their existence. Angel investors, on the other hand, are high net worth individuals, typically ex-entrepreneurs who would see are very successful in their corporate career. So compared to a VC fund, they have a relatively smaller pot, unless we're talking about Richard Branson and the likes. And they tend to invest in very, very early stage startups like MVP, even pre-MVP, sometimes even at the idea stage, but usually pre-revenue. So if your business is around this stage, then your best bet for successful investment would typically be to get an angel investor. So at those stages, you would usually have very little traction to show the potential of your business, and they understand that. And so those angel investors wouldn't be assessing you based on the traction, like what have you achieved, and how many units have you sold of this product, because you wouldn't have the product to show. Instead, they will want to know your credibility, your ability, your ideas, the research that you have done on the business, and how sound your business idea or product is. And from these, they would assess your potential. It could also be quite fair to say that the angels invest partly based on their emotions too. They're human, we are all human. Do they trust you? Do they like you as the person? Can they imagine working with you for the next several years? Because statistically, they know that most investments last longer than some marriages these days, and that's just a fact. And that's a risk that they have to take if they decide to invest in your company. Angel investors usually invest in syndicates, i.e. group of angel investors, and that is the reason why most of them can maintain quite a diverse portfolio. And the usual ticket of an angel syndicate is between 150K, 500K. So if you're looking for approximately that amount of money for like a year or 2 years, then you would be in the sweet spot, like potential sweet spots for an angel investment. Angels usually hang around other angels. So once you find one and manage to convince them about your business, it's fairly likely that you will be introduced to others so that they can all chip in, put their cash together and fill up that investment round for you. That's typically what happens. I sometimes get questions from founders like, I don't need the angels to be from the industry or sector that I'm operating in. I just need them to give me the investment and then just sit down and let me do my own thing. Or sometimes the founders will only interact with the lead angel, the person who leads the whole round, but not really with the rest, in which case I think they're missing out on a lot, because one of the perks of having an angel investment is, regardless of the role in this investment round, they worked up to this position because they were successful in their field, which means that they will have a wealth of network that they can introduce you to and increase the value of their investment by helping you. And so they should have a vested interest in your success as well. So whether you have already received an angel investment or whether you are going to look for one, please don't forget to utilize the network and make the most out of your relationship. And in terms of VC funds, as I said before, their pot is made of other people's money. These investors can be institutions like investment funds, insurance funds, and so on, but could also be from ultra high net worth investors. Each VC fund will have their own investment strategy and focus to deliver return on investment for their investors. They are very selective for that reason, and they are much less risk averse than angel investors. And for that reason, they typically invest in later stage of businesses when you have already proven that there's a demand for your business in the market. Typically that would be from the revenue generating stage where their success indicator and tractions are in, and based on which they can assess and predict your potential success and growth. And that is only possible after you have got a product to sell. Now, no two VC funds are exactly the same. They differ in their strategy, they differ in the product. So for example, they could provide equity investment, and they can also lend you money in return for shares later if you do well. That is a fairly frequent practice these days. which is very similar to convertible notes from angel investors, where they sort of lend you some money, and then maybe a year later they would have the option to convert that into shares. VC investment strategy can also differ in the companies that they would like to invest in. So it could be industry verticals or across all types of industries, but also at a specific stage, like above 5 million in revenue. But nowadays, we also see VC funds that offer support to early stage startups, maybe before commercialization of their business. So that's not rare. They also differ in the ticket size, i.e. how much they can invest into one company at one time. Usually we would see them getting involved from Series A upwards, so that's from £1 million and up. Sometimes if they really want to invest in you, but you're asking for more than they can offer, which typically could be the case for hardware startups, they could consider syndicating the deal with other VCs. So it's quite important that when searching for suitable VC funds, you look at their focus, what's their sweet spot, portfolio, their traction, because their historical success will also contribute to your image and subsequently the perceived value of your company for later investment round. Imagine people would certainly look at you differently if you get an investment from one of the legends like Sequoia or Tencent. That is just something that has way higher value than some VC fund that was created last year. Not to say that they don't matter, but it's just, they also contribute to the value and image of your company. I think I have like 2 more minutes. So now you know whether, hopefully you will know whether you want an investment from an angel or from VC funds. Now, how do you know whether they also want you? And because that is a two-side relationship, right? So with VC funds, like I said before, VCs want to see your historic figures, traction, revenue numbers, and pipeline of potential clients who you can sell to. Is this product validated by the market? And with angel investors, it's slightly different because at the early stage, they don't have anything to assess you apart from the management team and your potential idea, and MVP that oftentimes is not even finished yet. So how do they assess you? That would be, what's your idea? How is it currently being addressed by the market? Is it being solved, or is it a completely brand new idea or poll in the market? How is your idea better than all of the solutions out there? Have you, as the founder, the personality and capability and credentials to deliver? Have you personally invested into the company? Have you got any skin in the game? And it doesn't always have to be monetary, but sweat equity also counts. If you've worked in the business for 2 years without taking a salary, that's also your investment. That's an opportunity cost that you took on in order to grow this business. So that's also important as well. Who have you got in the team? What credentials do they have? Because at this stage, they don't have any numbers to work off of. And so the business is just as important as the team who's going to execute that idea and whether that team has what it takes to actually deliver the promises. I will, do I still have time, or?
I think that is all we have time for now.
Okay, that's fine. That's just time.
I could listen to you all day, but no, Hannah will be in Breakout Room 3 with myself, so we can carry on talking about this, and any questions or anything you want to talk about with Hannah and Barclays or anything, then join us in Breakout Room 3. Thank you so much, Hannah. That was great. And so finally, this afternoon, last but not least, please let me welcome Flavia to your screen.
Hi, how are you? I'm so glad to be here, and I'm definitely glad that Hannah and Heather and Kevin have covered so many points that are very important to you guys. A little bit about myself. I was 7 years in investment, ended up being portfolio manager for a fund with over 140 companies, from seed all the way to Series A and B, and have joined just a little bit over a year ago Silicon Valley Bank. But before I go on to tell you things about what we do at Silicon Valley Bank, I want to say that I feel that funding and the way you think about funding has to be very holistic. Seeing so many portfolio companies making that transition from almost an idea to a point where you have 5-10 million of revenue and you're thinking about an institutional round of 50-100 million, that journey has to involve all of those moving pieces, from accelerators and government programs and angel investors, which are the rock upon which we've built this amazing ecosystem, all the way into various different funds that sit very nicely at different stages of the journey. And one of the things that I always get asked by companies that I mentor and that I work with in my portfolio is, you know, at which point do I go for what type of investor? Because we are living in an alternative investment world, whether you're an angel, private capital, or venture capital, or an incubator, or crowdfunding. We're all sitting exactly in this same space of alternative investing. And I would like to just start that at the conception level, and I know Hana has covered some of these elements. You might want to consider incubators and accelerators and crowdfunding. They're very good foundations, and angel investors have deployed over £1 trillion in the last decade in the UK. So it's a massive amount of capital that has been deployed to innovation companies. But as you're making the startup to a company that has early traction, actually one of the things that you have to be aware is that the type of investor also changes. And you're naturally crossing over from private sources of capital to venture funds. And in our ecosystem, we have quite a number of funds that on the face of it can appear very similar. So when I say venture capital, you're probably thinking, it's the same type of structure, the same type of investor, but actually there's some differences. And I feel that some of the time is not really clear. If I was an entrepreneur, I wouldn't necessarily know the difference. And so my goal is to just kind of clarify some of those things. Look at, maybe elements that you're missing as you're thinking about your funding pathway and how you're going to get from where you are right now to a point where you're going to have a 10 million revenue producing company, or maybe you're looking at an exit in 3, 5, 7 years from now. And the other element that I want to cover is something that happens in our ecosystem, and I feel that we're not discussing enough some of these massive trends and currents that are happening, at least in the first few months of this year. And what does that mean for you as you're thinking about funding and how you're gonna capitalize the company? So I'll start with the first one. You're making the transition from crowdfunding and angels and looking at incubators, accelerators. Maybe you've gone through one of those amazing programs such as Techstars and Founders Factory, and now you're thinking about raising that seed round, which right now in the UK, if I look on average at the data, it's in excess of 1 million, and it's continuously growing. So you're now thinking about an early stage venture capital fund, and there are many types. When you say the word venture capital, there are many types of funds. The first one are the ones that are EIS. So the people that invest in those funds are themselves individuals that want to take advantage of a tax system that has been set up here in the UK and that benefits the investor in that fund. So I can invest 100,000 pounds in 1 year, financial year, and I'm going to get an EIS benefit. So I'm going to get 30% of that 100,000 immediately as a tax relief. But what that means for the fund manager is that they can only invest in qualifying companies. So even if they wanted to back a company with 0 revenues and that has maybe vast majority of their developers in Central and Eastern Europe, they probably couldn't do it. They have to be invested in UK domestic companies where vast majority, or at least 50% plus of the revenues are generated here, where 50% plus of the employees and contractors are based in the UK. So when you're thinking about going to EIS funds, please be aware that there are going to be some of those characteristics. And then on top of that, you're going to add criteria such as maybe it's fintech focus or SaaS focus or consumer focused fund, or maybe it's a very generalist one. And we know a few of them in our ecosystem. Then you have venture capital trusts, which are very much the same type of fund that has exactly the same structure, and it will offer a benefit to the investor in the fund. But again, they will have restrictions. So if you're thinking about companies like Maven and Mercia, and you would have seen how many investments they're done in this space by VCTs, you will notice that actually the companies can't be, again, pre-revenue. They will have to have a UK presence. They will have to have a huge part of the team here in the UK. So if you're looking at the ecosystem, even when you're saying venture capital, you're still speaking about a lot of different things. And obviously you have the sort of vanilla venture capital fund that is privately funded. It has no necessarily no relation to a particular tax structure, and they have slightly different mandates. So they can be global funds where they can invest from in companies across all the wherever they are, or they can be pan-European, so they can invest here in the UK, and they can go also in France and Belgium and Italy. And that's part of our ecosystem, and it's very important as you're thinking about your strategy of fundraising and of capitalizing the company at seed, in between seed and Series A, and as you're scaling, to consider those elements. Naturally, as you're approaching that Series A point, one of the things that you might want to consider is venture debt, and this is one of those areas that actually is of very, very important importance to us, because it enables companies that have those VC funds to leverage capital from organizations like Silicon Valley Bank that specializes in this space, and enables you to get another 20-30% on top of your Series A or B or beyond to accelerate your plan and dilute less, which becomes often very important. And another element that you might want to consider is also corporate venture capital funds. So on top of everything that has been said before, corporates have their own strategies. So you might want to consider, how does your company or your technology align with what this organization wants to do next? So that maybe there's an extra layer that you have to consider. And kind of wrapping all of this up, this is very important because we've started this year and we've seen a lot fewer deals happening in our ecosystem. And I know that if I was a founder right now, I would look at the data and I would look at the articles, and I would see a lot of governmental support and a lot of programs, and we're very fortunate to be in this country to be able to take advantage of Future Fund and of Sybil and of many, many other programs that are going to come from British Business Bank and other organizations. But one of the things that you would have noticed is that early stage has been down by kind of 80% compared to 2019. And January to March, we've only seen about 44 deals completed in our ecosystem. almost $100 million. We can convert it in pounds, but the data that I have in my head is in dollars. And you would have, looked at that and you would have panicked. But there's good news on the horizon. We have around 300 funds that are active in our ecosystem across the whole spectrum. We have a lot of venture debt providers and a number of amazing organizations. And in April, we've had a record month of 120 plus deals and over $1.4 billion invested in our ecosystem. So I feel that while the VC strategies are changing and they're perhaps more focused on protecting and hedging their portfolios, there's still so much capital that is targeting across at every single stage of a company's life. They're funds that have been specialized and are in the market actively looking for great opportunities for great teams. And most importantly, to unlock that potential. And one of the best things that you should be aware is that the way in which investors perceive, so if you're sitting on a fund side, right now, if I was investing, and many of my friends that work in venture capital, when they're looking at the market, they're thinking about larger rounds to give companies not only 12 months of runway, but maybe 24 months of runway to weather through this challenging period and to be able to make substantially more progress in their journey. So at my end, I think that one of the key ideas that I want to leave with you is that there are many ways in which you have to think about the sources of capital. There are private sources like for angels and family offices. There are institutional sources like EIS funds, VCT funds, VC funds. And there's substantially a whole spectrum of governmental programs that enable you to make a difference in your journey. And you should consider all of them as you're weaving your strategy. And most importantly, please be aware of the dynamics of our ecosystem. And if you're thinking about your company and the health of your company moving forward, think about runways close to 24 months and go out there and show an analysis and the strategic thinking that is absolutely required during this period, because investors at every level, I believe to my very core that they understand what is required and they're very much aware of what it will take to get from this period to an early stage to a level of growth that you can sustain. So at my end, I'm very happy to answer any questions in the private rooms. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share my insight with you guys.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Flavia. That was really great. Thank you so much. Again, perfect timing. You've all done absolutely spot on. So you'll all be allowed back as guests. No, I'm joking. You will be anyways. So yes, now it is time for the breakout rooms. I believe they have again been posted in the chat. So pick a room, head over there. We'll be there with all the speakers anyways, having a chat with them. So I'm going to end the meeting now and hopefully see you all in some breakout rooms. Before we go, just in case obviously you can't stay or for whatever reason, please again do look out for the post-event mailer, because that will include the latest magazine that you get 24 hours earlier than everyone else, you lucky people. And if you haven't already, although I just saw Paul's comment like pop up, it seems that loads of you have been booking in with Buzzbar, which is amazing. That is exactly what we want to see. So if you haven't already, please do check that out, because they can help so much in like pretty much every area in these times. So yes, again, thank you very much for joining us and hope to see you all soon in the breakout rooms.